There have been some concerning things brought up about Nebraska's defense after game one, and that's fair. But I'm going to tell you right now, there's some encouraging things I saw as well. So the first half of this video, I'm going to tell you what I liked, what encouraged me, and then we got to dive into what needs to be improved and addressed sooner rather than later. We'll get to that in the second half of the video, ladies and gentlemen. Let's light this candle. Welcome to the Carriker Chronicles, the People Show. Check the polls of Husker Nation, brought to you by DPS Concrete Construction. Check them out at dpsconstruction.net. Also, as always, carrikerchronicles.com. Ladies and gentlemen, yes, there's some things that need to be improved and addressed from game one for Nebraska, defense, etc. Okay, there's positives as well, as I alluded to in the intro of this show. We're going to get to that. But in the past, let's be real, Nebraska, the odds are we would have found a way to lose a game like that, and we did not. We found a way to win that game. Now, we're going to put a couple of picks up on the screen. The second one is a pick that caught a lot of people's attention late in the fourth quarter. And it's a pick of a guy wearing a t-shirt that says, "We almost always almost win." The ironic part is, you look at the game clock, we're up 20-17, 34 seconds left in the game. That was the moment that Malcolm Hartzog got the game-clinching INT. That's the ironic part of that. So if you're like me, and you're glad that Nebraska, pluses, minuses, everything in between from that game, just found a way to win the game, and hopefully we can do that more often going forward. If you're like me and you like that, then smash the like button. As always, if you haven't done so yet, make sure you subscribe and or ring the notification bell if you haven't done so yet. Full disclosure, it helps us. Also, we got a lot of unique content coming forward in the future. I'm working on some unique interviews, got reactions, game breakdowns, etc. All right, subscribe, ring that notification bell if you haven't done so yet. Now, when we talk about the defense, I'm going to talk about some of the things that I liked first, and then we'll dive into things that need to be improved and addressed, etc. as the season goes along. Number one, they gave up 17 points and 271 yards of total offense to Cincinnati. Now, I don't know how good Cincinnati is or is not. My gut tells me they are significantly better than they were last year, and I felt like their offensive side of the ball was going to be the strength of their team, but I have no idea. I have no idea what they're going to do after this, but every NFL team defensive meeting room that I was in, our goal was to hold the opponent to 17 points or less. Nebraska did that. And to 275 yards of total offense or less. And Nebraska did that, holding Cincinnati to 271 total yards of offense. Now you look at the next two opponents we have, there's a good chance we will hopefully hold them to 17 points or less, same amount of total yards or less. So we could go into that Michigan game giving up an average of 17, 14, 13 points per game, which would be amongst some of the better teams in the nation for a young defense. Now, again, a lot of that depends on who you play, how tough your schedule is, etc., etc. Again, I don't know how good Cincinnati is. Now, here are a couple of things that I saw were positives from the game. Our pass defense is much improved. Cincinnati completed 13 of 25 passes. That's 52% completion percentage. That is not good from their perspective, great from our perspective. And just a reminder, I talked about this in my prediction show for the Cincinnati-Nebraska game. John Butler's forte is pass defense. As we know, he's a secondaries coach. But in Buffalo, for 5 straight years, he had the number one pass defense in the world. Number one pass defense in the NFL. So that is his forte. There was good communication in the back end, much improved in that department. Good coverage, and a lot of tightly contested balls as the game went along as well. They did not allow many big plays on defense, and that was one of my keys to the game. Now, there was some leakiness. We'll get to that. Some leaky defense, so to speak. Not even my words, but it makes sense after what you saw. All right, but not a lot of big plays. In fact, they only allowed one rushing play of over 15 yards. It was a 29-yard run by quarterback Brendan Sorsby, who was a leading rusher of the game. He averaged 7.4 yards per carry for 96 total rush yards. Can't have that from quarterbacks going forward, but we're going to address that a little bit later in the video. But they gave up 0 pass plays of over 15 yards. So one play the entire game of over 15 yards, and that was it. Cincinnati only averaged, peep this, ladies and gentlemen, 2.8 yards per pass attempt. That's crazy. Pass defense, much improved. Not giving up big plays, much improved, at least so far. All right, this stuck out to me as well. There was little intangible things. There's things we need to improve on. Absolutely. Going to get to that. There's little intangible things that stuck out to me. To me, there was 4 plays in the game that kind of stuck out as the biggest impact plays of the game. You have the 4th down touchdown pass from Dylan Raiola. All right, you have, and I'm going to kind of lump all of Archie Wilson's punts into one big important play because special teams matter. He pinned Cincinnati inside their 20-yard line 3 times and inside their 10-yard line twice. That's enormous when it comes to helping the team, playing the field position battle, and helping the defense. So to me, that's at least one big impact play, if not more, when you kind of bunch that all together and how well he did in his first American football game ever. But the 2 other impact plays were on defense. All right, you got Malcolm Hartzog, who made the play that sealed the victory. INT in the quarter of the end zone. That's got to be an impact play. All right, and also Vincent Shavers had a big hit, caused the fumble. Nebraska recovers on Cincinnati's 24-yard line, short field for the offense. Nebraska goes in and scores. So the play that sealed the game, the INT, a play that gave Nebraska's offense a short field, all right, big hit, fumble. All right, of the 4 biggest impact plays of the game, 50% of them came from the defense. That has to mean a little bit of something. Doesn't mean we don't have areas to improve on, because we do, but that has to matter. Now, here's some of the things, in my opinion, that need to be improved. There's 2 major things and a bonus. 2 major things that stand out to me. Before we dive into that, I want to give a shout out to our sponsors, DPS Concrete Construction. Jason Armstrong's a great dude. I actually just watched the Cincinnati game from his suite. All right, he goes to Chiefs games all the time. He's a big-time Chiefs fan. If your line of work is concrete work, all right, retainer wall work, go to dpsconstruction.net. You want to work for a guy like Jason Armstrong. If you want this type of work done, dpsconstruction.net. They are your local concrete experts. Also, shout out to Husker Auto Group. All 2025 Chevy Silverados and GMC Sierras, half-ton, three-quarter-ton, and one-ton trucks in stock are up to $11,500 off of MSRP. Over 100 trucks available and ready for immediate delivery. See HuskerAutomotive.com for details. Also, Husker BMW of Lincoln has 2025 model BMW X7s all-wheel drive marquee SUVs available for immediate delivery for up to $8,000 off MSRP. Husker Auto Group, again, I bought 3 vehicles from them in the past year, so I'm putting my money where my mouth is. Husker Auto Group is committed to delivering an excellent customer experience, conveniently located on North 27 and I-80. Now, here are the 2 major things with a bonus that stick out to me that need to be addressed and improved. Run defense. Okay, right off the top of my head, run defense. Their quarterback, again, averaged 7.4 yards per carry. Now, a lot of that was on loose scrambles. We're going to get to that in a minute. Their top running back averaged 7.6 yards per carry, and as a team, Cincinnati averaged 7 yards per rush for 202 total rush yards in the game. We'll see how good Cincinnati's rush game is going forward, but we're going to face bigger, stronger, with all due respect to the Bearcats, Big Ten teams in the future that are going to try to exploit this. As I mentioned, Cincinnati wasn't explosive, but it was leaky when you look at it from our perspective on the defensive side of the ball, and that's just not something that you can have. All right, a lot of the yards, to be fair, were on quarterback runs, but also you knew he was going to do that coming in to the game. Now, when it comes to being lighter up front, which we are, we're athletic, we're faster than we've probably been in a while, and you're doing a lot of stunts, you're doing a lot of twists. What's going to happen is you got guys stunting from one gap to the other, and then you got a backer coming, or you got guys stunting out with the backer coming up the middle, or maybe they'll do a stunt and a cross in the middle. So what happens is with lighter athletic guys, you don't do that with 330-pound guys very often. They don't move quick. They're the guys they can't be moved, so to speak. Challenge to an offensive lineman if he hears that. But when you got lighter guys, you're trying to create penetration tackles for loss. We only had 2 tackles for loss in the game. All right. And I'm going to get to quarterback pressures in just a minute. But if you don't quite get there, it can leave creases in the defense too. So you've got to execute the stunts really well so you don't have any creases in the defense. Just keep an eye on that going forward. Young front, going to get better, going to improve, bright future. Okay. We're focused on the present, at least in the present moment in time. Number 2, the pass rush. Now, Williams Nwaneri, he showed what he can do. I mentioned this in my gut reaction after the game. All right, 6 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, and 1 fumble recovery. He's a dude you keep an eye out for as the season progresses. But again, we had 0 sacks in the game, 2 tackles for loss by 3 different players combined, and we need more consistent pressure on the quarterback. Now, I will say this. Some coaches, if you know a guy like Sorsby is going to run around, like Michael Vick, there was a time when we played Kansas, they had a scrambling quarterback. 2 times that I remember specifically, coaches were like, the goal isn't to get a sack. The goal is to keep the quarterback contained. So you may not get as much pressure, but you're not going to let a guy who wants to run around and doesn't want to sit in the pocket, you're not going to let him run around. You're going to force him to sit in the pocket. So you may not get as many sacks as pressures because you're trying to keep him contained more so than just get after him. Because if you just get after him, you'll get more sacks and pressures, but he also might get loose more often. So the problem is we didn't get a ton of pressure and Sorsby still got loose. You got to get one or the other. Again, young defense going to get better. I don't think this is an indictment on anything. It's things that need to just be addressed and be improved. Now, I do want to mention one more thing. The Blackshirts forced two turnovers, as I mentioned earlier, and multiple 3-and-outs throughout the game as well. There was a time during the game when I felt like they were kind of taken over, and the yardage discrepancy from Nebraska to Cincinnati was over 100-yard total yardage discrepancy at one point, and for a large part of the game, it was. Okay, but I got stuff moving behind me. We gonna keep rolling. By the way, it's a Nebraska helmet that typically holds that up if you couldn't tell. We keep it raw and real in the Carriker Chronicles. There came a point in the second half where there was a couple of drives where Cincinnati moved the ball too quickly down the field for my comfort. All right, so just got to find that consistency. When they make their adjustments, we make our adjustments. We've got to find a way to be consistent throughout the game. Shutting them down for part of the game and then them moving the ball a little bit too easy, especially in the second half, isn't ideal, obviously. One of the most obvious things I've ever said. But that, I was like, man, we're starting to take over. And then they started to move the ball too easy, and it made me personally uncomfortable, and I don't think it was just me. All right. Also, the defense ultimately made the play that sealed the victory for Nebraska. And this is going to start to lead into what the intangible things that I'm starting to see with this defense. Yes, areas of improvement are needed, but Malcolm Hartzog made that interception. It's been pointed out by a bunch of people right after a tough penalty on him. That's mental toughness to come right back after a tough penalty late in the game, less than a minute to go. I mean, that's hard for a player, man. You don't want to cost your team like that. What's he do? Turns around and makes one of the biggest plays of the game. That's mental toughness. That's the ability to bounce back. All right. Now, it also depends on what lens you're looking at this team through. If you're looking at the lens of this is a college football playoff team, 10-2, 11-1, that's fine. Look at the lens look at the team through the lens you want to. I don't look at them through that lens. Obviously, they can go to the CFP. I've talked about Indiana and SMU coming out of nowhere at nauseum at this point last year. Nebraska can absolutely do that. I'm just not expecting it. I'm expecting to win 8 games, and I predicted to win 9 games, and that's the lens I'm looking at them through. So I think depending on the lens you're looking at the team through, it can affect how you see certain things and just how drastic they may feel or not feel to you, at least in the moment. Hope that makes sense. All right, my final personal thoughts on the defense so far. We're young, especially up front. All right, for some of these guys, this was their first. Now, they may have played last year at times, but this was their first major, intense college football atmosphere that they've been a part of from start to finish for 4 full quarters. We've got to continue to improve in certain areas as a team as a whole, as a defensive unit as a whole, up front as a whole as well. But here's what I'll tell you. All right, they'll probably make the biggest jump from game 1 to game 2. And younger players are going to make more drastic improvements week to week than an older player will. So keep your eye on this defense week to week and see how much they do or do not improve each and every single Saturday. Although 25% of our games this year are not on Saturdays, 2 on Friday, 1 on Thursday. Each and every time Nebraska sets foot on the field to play a game. All right, now this season's ceiling and floor as a team. This did dawn on me as well. Let me know if you disagree in the comments. This season's ceiling and floor as a team may be connected, all right, to how much and how quickly the defense improves in these couple of key areas that I just mentioned. Because there's such a variance of how good or not good they could be potentially. We've vastly improved in some areas already from last season. Now, little things I've noticed about this defense, coming back to the intangibles, they've showed mental toughness. They like to hit in their competitors. Watch them play. The big hit from Vincent Shavers to cause the fumble was no accident. Malcolm Hartzog bouncing back from a tough penalty to get that INT was no accident. This team has some swagger, they have some mental toughness, and they got guys who like to hit on that defensive side of the ball, since that's what we're talking about right here, right now. I'm not limiting there, but man, it sticks out to me with some of those young guys, especially on defense. All right, now, there are things we need to improve on quickly. As I mentioned, the Michigan game may be perfectly timed because we got 3 weeks essentially to improve in these areas. And they're probably going to make their biggest leaps and bounds of improvement from game 1 to 2, then possibly 2 to 3 and 4. We also might be a little bit fresher than Michigan going into that game, with all due respect to Akron and Houston Christian. But hopefully we're able to get other guys on the depth chart into the game so they can get more reps, get more experience, build more depth in the second half of these games. And maybe our starters would be a little bit fresher going into that Michigan game, because Michigan's got to play a team like Oklahoma before they play us. I can't help but wonder, while there's going to be a learning curve, okay, with the youth on this defense, and that's okay. It's part of it. Ty Robinson, Nash Hutmacher, they aren't going to be on your team every single year. So part of replacing them is a learning curve with young, talented players. But I can't help but wonder if some of these players, do they have a little bit of the clutch gene? Did we start to see that a little bit against Cincinnati or not? I don't know. It's something I'm going to keep my eye on. Now, none of this guarantees anything, to be honest. We know that. None of this guarantees anything. Improvements definitely need to happen over the course of the next 3 weeks before we play Michigan, and I guess we'll see what happens each and every week. It was interesting because not only is the variance of what could happen with this team, like the ceiling could be anywhere from 11-1, the floor could be anywhere from 6-6. It's one of the things that's going to make this team so interesting, intriguing to watch this season. It's always fun for me to watch Nebraska football, more fun if we're winning. But man, the variance can be so up and down and makes this team very interesting and very intriguing. And so is the reaction to this team, and so are the thoughts on this team. They're all over the place. I don't know that anybody's right or wrong. That's why I tune in each and every week to learn more and more about this team. All right, national champion, one of the smartest dudes you'll ever meet, Rob Zatechka. The softness of our run defense is concerning. Okay, that was his initial take. Here are some of the responses. All right, to be fair, this is one of the 4 best running teams we will face this year. It does make Michigan scary, though. All right. Rob says, I'll be interested to see how Cincy does going forward. Solid on defense, too, with Corleone and those linebackers, their nose guard and their linebackers. And then Dr. Calder says, call it like you see it, which all of us try to do. Now, it's interesting. J.D. Pickell put this out. It's a snapshot of a video. It says Nebraska finds a way to lose that game a year ago. Probably right. For me, we didn't just find a way to win. The game wasn't handed to us. It's not like Cincinnati had a fluke fumble. It's not like Cincinnati made a gigantic unforced error. We not only found a way to win, we took that game from them, literally took it from them. So to JD's point, that's something that might be a little bit different about this team. Everything may not be a valley full of daisies and roses all the time, but what happens in the key moments, in the big time moments of games, that's what's going to matter the most. Josh Pate, who has Nebraska in the college football playoff. Oregon got pushed to the brink by Idaho in week 1 last year. Idaho's an FCS team, if you didn't know, and won the Big Ten, undefeated, number 1 in the country at the end of the regular season, if you don't remember. Nebraska is ahead of that pace. I don't think he's talking about undefeated, number 1 in the country at the end of the regular season, but he's making the point you never know what's going to happen in game 1. So while I'm surprised we didn't cover, all right, because we have really good coaches, we have a lot of talented players, Game 1s are so unpredictable. There's so much new for us, so much new for them. Just getting the win is all I really wanted. Here's some more. Best quote I've heard is, I'll take an ugly win over a pretty loss. Couldn't have said it better. Positives, we played and we beat a Power 4 team to open the season. The first time since 2003. I talked about that on my show here last week. First game of the year, only can go up from here. And then Bill Simpson responded, everybody in the stadium saw it. The run defense was very leaky. The quarterback was able to scramble too much. That almost won the game for Cincinnati. Nebraska needs a better scheme in Big Ten running league. Just glad we won. Hey, everybody's entitled to their own take. I just thought this was interesting. Skurs News responded, I have major concerns with both lines. Couldn't seem to get any pressure on D, and our O-line was getting shoved back 3 to 4 yards every play. I don't know about every play. There was times in the game where we were opposing our will in the inside run game a little bit at times. Emmett Johnson runs really hard too. Can this type of thing be fixed in a week? Not in 1 week, but it can be fixed maybe in a few weeks, hopefully. All right, Nebraska has more wins, think about this, in Arrowhead than the Chiefs do this year. Let that sink in. All right, Heidi Liss, spot on, as always, pretty or not, it's the W that counts. All right, the same W also ends the narrative of the curse. We were never cursed. We just had 2 decades of mediocre coaching. Oh, her words, not mine. I didn't read the full tweet, but anyways, before I read it on air here, but that's on me. All right, the win last night strengthens our players' mentality. I like that. That's a good point. Change the mindset, change the game. Agree with that 100%. I got a couple more things. Before I do, I want to give a shout out to one more of our sponsors, 626 Auto Service in Lincoln. Go to 626autoservice.com. They're also located at 2405 P Street in good old Lincoln, Nebraska, locally owned for 2 decades, 20 years, ladies and gentlemen. Ask for Dean Phelps. He's the owner. Or Eric or Jeff. If and when you do go in, tell them that Adam sent you. They do great work at a very reasonable price. We now have kids who are driving, hence the reason why we bought 3 vehicles this past year. Myself, my wife needed new ones. Plus, we have a 16-year-old driving. And this is where my family and I take all of our vehicles to be taken care of. Everything from oil changes to engine replacements. They offer shuttle rides, loaner vehicles, and financing as well if needed. Again, that's 626 Auto Service in Lincoln. Go to 626autoservice.com. I just thought this was entertaining. If you remember Jared Lorenzen, large, stocky quarterback for Kentucky back in the day, 300 plus pounds. All right, the next superstar, Jared Lorenzen's son, Tayden, is wearing his dad's 22 jersey at the same high school and scored a walk-off 2-point conversions to start the season. Shout out to big, oversized high school quarterbacks. That's what I was. All right, this is very interesting. Budget allocation. How teams are allocating their budget. offense, defense, quarterback, wide receiver, ACC, Big 10, Big 12, SEC. The ACC, 70% of their budget goes to the offense, 30 defense as an overall conference as a whole. The Big 10 is 62% offense, 38 defense. The Big 12 is 64% of their budget is spent on offense, 36 defense. I got to be honest, I thought the offense would be higher for the Big 12. And the SEC spends the most amount of money on defense, 43% on defense of their budget is spent there, 57% on offense. You can see the breakdown if you look at the graphic on screen of quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, offensive line, defensive line, how much is spent where. I thought this was an insanely interesting graphic. Of course, quarterback, running back, quarterback is spent the most on, then offensive line, then defensive line, okay, then running backs. All right, so 19.4%, 17%, 15.5%, 10.6% are spent on those four position groups specifically, and it goes through everything. Every position group, how much is spent. This is the Pro Football Focus. You can find these anywhere online. The run grades for Nebraska via Pro Football Focus. All right, I'm just going to read the top 5 names. You can look at the full list on the screen if you'd like. If you're on YouTube, if you're on podcast, check it out on YouTube. All right, Keona Davis, graded out number 1. Rex Guthrie, Jalen George, Marquise Buford, and Andrew Marshall. There's some DBs and safeties stepping up there in the run game, which is what you need if you're going to have a lot of DBs and safeties out there on the field and with a bunch of variant type packages. All right, you look at the overall blocking grades. Number 1, Heinrich Harburg on offense. Number 2, Emmett Johnson, Elijah Pritchett. All right, Luke Lindenmeyer, Rocco Spindler. Top 5, you can look at the whole list if you'd like. When you look at the pass blocking grades, it's Elijah Pritchett, number 1. He had a couple of mistakes in there. The talent is there. Can he find the consistency? Rocco Spindler, Teddy Prohaska, Emmett Johnson, and Justin Evans, and then Harburg at number 6. Here's some of the Kool-Aid. All right. This is Josh Pate, who has Nebraska into the college football playoff, predicts Nebraska will go 10-2 this year. Ohio State 10-2, Oregon and Penn State 11-1, USC 9-3, Michigan, Illinois, Indiana, Washington 8-4, Iowa, our good buddies 7-5. We'll see how this plays out. Again, there's both ends of the spectrum here. Talent composite rankings for 2025. Nebraska has the 20th overall roster when it comes to talent composite rankings. Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, Texas, Oregon, LSU, Clemson, Texas A&M, Penn State, Notre Dame. 9 of the top 10 teams, by the way, are Big 10 and SEC teams. Okay, and then you go to the top 20. At number 20, there is Nebraska. Colorado's at 30. Cincinnati was nowhere on here. But again, finding a way to win game 1 with so much new on both sides is all that matters. Now, brought in a lot of new coaches this year. Brought in a top 5 transfer portal class. Got a top 20 talent roster in the country. Okay. This is a graphic when it comes to Big 10 Coach of the Year, most likely candidates. Number 1 is Brett Bielema. Matt Rhule's number 2. I'm curious to see. Matt Rhule, year 3 jump. Let's see what happens. All right. Now, more Kool-Aid. Let's have fun. Predicting the Big 10 football teams that will be 4-0 to start the season. That means we beat Michigan and win the next 2 weeks. Illinois, Nebraska, Oregon, Penn State, Ohio State, Minnesota, USC. I did predict us to go 4-0. We'll see what happens. I'm allowed to change my picks as these weeks go along. All right, Jake Butt, who's on the Big Ten Network, one of the best tight ends in the history of the Big Ten, has, as far as top 20 Big Ten football players, has Dylan Raiola rated as the 18th best player in the Big Ten Conference. All right, and if you didn't know, Matt Rhule's got his podcast every Thursday. Now, I don't know if he did one last Thursday with the game being Thursday, but he's also going to be on Pat McAfee each and every week, trying to get that name out there, trying to get the Nebraska brand out there. With everything we talked about today, I thought this quote from Denzel Washington was so apropos. The only thing that separates successful people from the ones who aren't is the willingness to work very, very hard. I can't wait to see how this team improves over the next couple of weeks heading into that Michigan game. It's going to be very interesting for me. Did anybody else realize, by the way, Nebraska actually won both the turnover and the penalty battle? We had 0 turnovers, Cincinnati had 2. We had 3 penalties, and Cincinnati had 4. Now, technically, we had 27 total penalty yards. They had 20. All right, that's not a lot for a game 1. There's some noticeable improvement there. Nebraska almost doubled time of possession of Cincinnati. 39-30 for the good guys, 20 minutes and 30 seconds for the other guys. All right, here are fan questions for you fine folks at home, brought to you by Husker Auto Group. Again, check them out at huskerautomotive.com. You can also follow me on X, TikTok, and Facebook. And here are fan questions. Number 1, what's the favorite thing you saw from the Blackshirts in game 1? Number 2, what's the single biggest thing you feel they need to improve on? And number 3, is Runza better or Skyline Chili? Which one's better? Here's a couple of other interesting things. Poor Patrick Mahomes. Here's a picture of Patrick Mahomes just trying to get an autograph from me. Poor guy. Okay, here's Sam Cook, legendary Nebraska punter, 15-plus year NFL punter. The only punter I've ever seen in my life that could bench press 315 pounds. I saw it with my own eyes. He's now one of the specialists, the special teams assistant coaches for the Baltimore Ravens. And shout out to future Nebraska quarterback Trey Taylor. He took to X and said, "Congratulations to my Husker family. 1-0 is all that mattered, and you found a way to get the job done. Oh, and won a game that was one score. Now time for me to get my work done. Good luck this high school season, Trey. Until next time, Husker Nation, may the force be with you. Go, Big Red Nose. Remember to throw the ball."